I know RJ Ochoa is going to appreciate that keyword, kerfuffle. We're going to bring him on. Blogging the Boys, the big wig at Blogging the Boys, RJ Ochoa, joining us now on the Buyers Barricades guest line. RJ, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing even better now that Dear Maria Count Me In brought me in. I mean, that was all of a sudden, Joe, it was 2002, and life was simple again.
What were you, like 5 in 2002?
I was in middle school at that time
Okay.
and going through a lot, dealing with, cursing for the first time, you know what I mean? Feeling like a renegade, you know what I mean? When you're
Sure.
dropping an occasional F-bomb or two. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. That's why I still do that. It makes me feel good today to drop an occasional F-bomb, RJ. So it's all good. It's all good. Hey, listen, the schedule comes out for the Dallas Cowboys, and I don't know. You look at it; it's not an easy one, that's for sure. First impressions.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I first impressions are it's not as bad as I think people think. It has some unique quirks, and that's honestly the part that I enjoy kind of unpacking. The 4 Thursday games, I think that's a little. The first game is a Thursday. Like it's not really like they're dealing with a disadvantage there. They also play on a Thursday, 7 days after Thanksgiving against a team who's doing the same thing. So again, kind of 6 in one, half a dozen in another. There's no question that kind of around you're familiar with sweep season and television.
Sure.
There's no question that the Cowboys have been given some epic matchups and some epic windows in that time. I suppose if I'm stunned at anything, and this I guess applies to Kansas City and Detroit as well. It's that Dallas is playing on Thanksgiving and Christmas. It just feels like the NFL is not even hiding it anymore. It's a matter of the Cowboys are our cash cow. We know that, and we want everybody to just pay attention because you're going to one way or the other.
That's interesting you said that, and Pledge and I were talking about it. Anybody that says the Cowboys aren't America's team anymore is dead wrong because clearly they are, and this shows you that they are. But what's interesting to me, and I love the matchup, and I can't wait for it, when you got Dallas and Kansas City on Thanksgiving Day, that game really doesn't need anything else. I mean, people are going to watch that anyway, but the fact that it's the Chiefs and the Cowboys, I mean, that's going to be enormous.
Yeah, and I think that same principle also holds true for the season opener. People have always said like, oh, they should have a rematch or whatever. It's like, dude, when you've been wandering in the desert for 3 months, you don't need filet mignon. You know what I mean? Like, give me some Ritz crackers, and it will be the most delicious thing I've ever had. And so you're right. I mean, for anyone who's unaware, the Cowboys game on Thanksgiving is the second most watched program on television every year. Number one is the Super Bowl. And so we're not talking about, any episode of Grey's Anatomy or the Oscars. No, like the second most thing watched on TV every year is this game. And so it is interesting to kind of burn the Chiefs, if you will. It is a CBS year, and so there is a bit of an affinity there. I will say I don't think it would have happened if not for the fact that it's going to be Patrick Mahomes' first start at AT&T Stadium. And outside of the fact that that's true, if he weren't a Texas guy, if he weren't so synonymous with Dallas, obviously he's a big Mavericks fan, whatever, it's just kind of the perfect storm of material, perfect kind of family aspect. Obviously, we get the same kind of packages every year. It is weird. It is strange. And also along those lines, I mentioned the 7 days later. We've seen that happen a lot for the Cowboys over the last decade or so, but we've never seen them play the Lions. It's always a team that obviously also plays on Thanksgiving so that you have the equal rest advantage and whatnot, but it's just never been Detroit. And so the Lions being good has earned them a seat at the adult table.
Well, I think that's interesting, too. And the fact that I think the Lions came to Jerry World last year and the Cowboys are going to Detroit this time, that makes that game intriguing, depending on what the Lions are now that they've lost Ben Johnson. There are a lot of teams, and we were talking about Chicago, Detroit. Those teams you're going to have to watch and see what kind of identity they have now. Are they going to change a lot? Or are they, especially Chicago, is Ben Johnson going to completely change what they've been in the past, and that's mostly defense?
Yeah, and I think that the Cowboys play the two lines coordinators, Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn, very early in the season. In fact, before the first week of October is over, and so in that sense, because these are great coaches, and I think they're going to turn those programs around. I think that we're going to see them, turn into solid football teams, but that's not going to happen early on. It's probably not going to happen in the first 5 weeks of the season, and so the Cowboys kind of need that opportunity to kind of stack some wins because the second half, the final quarter, if you will, is so intense. And that's where, again, the little intricacies that I like, the Cowboys, their first 2 weeks are against division rivals. That doesn't happen often. Since the NFL merger in 1970, this is the 11th instance in which the Cowboys begin their season with back-to-back divisional games. And some people might be like, well, who cares? It's not big of a deal. Well, those are really valuable games. Like if you win or lose those games, that takes like 6 weeks to make up for it. And you still have to kind of get some help from your division rivals losing. And so if they can, squeak by 1-1 through those first 2 games, maybe even, God willing, win those 2. And then you catch the Bears when they're still learning who they are. You catch those Jets when they're still learning who they are. I don't think it's out of the question that come Halloween, we do view this team as someone who's going to be a legitimate playoff contender.
Well, I don't think there's any question about that. I fully expect them to be a playoff contender. And I'll tell you what my record is for the Cowboys a little bit later in this interview as we visit with RJ Ochoa, editor-in-chief for Blogging the Boys. I find that interesting, that Philadelphia game. Not only is it a division rival, but they're going to hang that Super Bowl banner during that game.
Yeah, that gets said a lot, and I don't mean this against you specifically, Joe. To be clear, I have no problem saying anything against you specifically.
I realize that, yes.
But, I mean, like, if you're a Cowboys player and someone's like, well, they're going to hang the banner in front of you, like, I would just be like, well, the banner would have been there, right? Like whenever we went anyway, like, it would have been there, right? Like, okay, cool. Like, you mean the Philadelphia fans are going to scream at us and say mean things? Oh, no. Like, I do think there's a little bit of a callous there. It's fun and it's great television and it's entertaining. There's no doubt about it. And you can argue that maybe this team kind of needs that kick in the ass to, wake up a little bit. So in that sense, it's not a bad thing. I'll say, look, I hate the Eagles more than most things. I mean, the number of things I hate more than them is I can count on one hand. That being said, though, I think the fact that they've become so good and that the 2022 version of them didn't win the Super Bowl, they don't bother me anymore. Like, they're annoying and I want them to lose and I want the Cowboys to beat them, but it doesn't, cause me to lose sleep at night the way that it used to. And, if the Cowboys, look, ultimately the Cowboys are going to Philadelphia very, very early as possible. And that's a huge win. And that's another kind of takeaway I have for the schedule at large. If you look, the Cowboys visit the Denver Broncos in week 8. That's October 26th. From that point on, they do not travel outdoors until Christmas Day when they visit the Washington Commanders. And so this is a team that has, to be straight up, played kind of soft when it's been cold outside. And they don't have to deal with any of those outdoor external elements as October comes, as November rolls on, and as December arrives. And you can make an argument that maybe that Week 18 game on the road against the Giants will or won't be inconsequential. We've seen it break both ways in the past. So it's very possible that the Cowboys play a single game of consequence, below 40 degrees the entire season.
Well, I look at the schedule, RJ, and you're right. There are some teams in there the Cowboys should handle. They should handle the Jets. They should handle the Panthers. The Chicago Bears, to me, is a toss-up just because I don't know what they're going to be like. And then Denver is another team. That's going to be a tough matchup for anybody. The Cowboys included, I think, just because of what they are and what Sean Payton's trying to build there. And then you look at that stretch run. And the Raiders, who knows? I'm giving the Cowboys that game. But you got Philly, the Chiefs, the Lions, and the Vikings, and the Chargers. Those 5 games could be very difficult, and that's a tough stretch.
Yeah, and that's all coming out of the bye. The one before the bye, the Cardinals, I'm a little bit higher on them than a lot of people. I think that, and the Cardinals are one of those teams that kind of, just throw a knuckleball at the Cowboys. They can't quite seem to hit. And the Broncos are that way for that matter. Cowboys haven't beaten the Broncos since 1995. It's a weird kind of, kryptonite of theirs. And so that's why those early games are going to be so valuable. You're going to have to, you can't drop those papita games. You have to beat the Jets. You have to beat the Panthers. You have no room for error because, look, I don't know how good I think the Vikings are going to be or the Chargers are going to be, but I certainly anticipate the Eagles to be good. I think Washington takes a step back, but it is still a division rival and a head coach who knows you very well. Detroit, is a little bit interesting because they have so much turnover from a coaching perspective. It's not easy. There's no doubt about that. It's very difficult. But, I mean, in that respect, it's the NFL, and it's never going to be.
Never going to be easy. We're visiting with RJ Ochoa, the editor-in-chief for Blogging the Boys, and talking about the Dallas Cowboys schedule here. The Green Bay Packer game on a Sunday night, early in the season. What is that, week 4? I worry about that game, RJ, because it seems like Green Bay owns the Cowboys.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. To me, this game feels like, I know you remember week 3, 2008, Joe. The Cowboys went to Lambeau Field. It was Aaron Rodgers' first season as a starter, and they just beat the crap. I mean, like the absolute crap out of the Packers, and it felt so good. It felt so awesome to walk so tall and act like, oh, whatever. And we had no idea what was coming, obviously, for the next decade and a half. That being said, I think this is a bit of an empty calorie game for me. I think it will be billed as, the rematch. It's Green Bay's first appearance in the building since the playoffs game, obviously, a year and a half ago. And the Cowboys, I think, will kick the crap out of them. And they will, pound their chest and act tall like, oh, man, this is awesome. And it's like, cool, man, it's not even in October. You know what I mean? Like, it's a September game. You know what I mean? Like, it will be nice, and it's a conference game, and those things matter and have tiebreakers associated with them. But there will be a lot of people who act like the score is settled when it will still be like 100-3.
100-3. I'm going to write that down, RJ, and I'm going to keep it handy.
No, I'm saying that's the grand total of like ongoing score between the Packers and the Cowboys. And the Cowboys winning this game will get them to 3 in that match.
I got you. I understand. All right, RJ, I know you've gone through the schedule. You've done your win-loss and your projections. I've done mine. Before we get to yours, I'm going to tell you what I have the Cowboys. And I thought it was fair. I think Pledge thinks it's fair too. And I'm trying to, my Cowboy bias there. I don't want to let that get involved. And I don't want you to do that either. I've got the Cowboys going 10-7 with this schedule. What do you think of that first of all, before you tell us what you have?
I think that's really fair and conservative. And I bet that of the 7 losses you predicted, I bet you could convince yourself otherwise on maybe 2 of them. And
sure,
I think even some of the wins, there's probably a kind of push there, which is why, depending on your sportsbook du jour, most have the Cowboys set at a win total over under of 7.5. And look, I'm in no way like Cowboys winning the Super Bowl. You're stupid if you don't believe that, but I do think you're stupid if you think the Cowboys are going to win 7 or fewer games. That's not who they are. Again, they are very flawed, and they will lose in the playoffs, and it will be embarrassing, and they will embarrass themselves and all of us. But this is not a team and an organization and a quarterback who bottom out like that. They've lost 7 or fewer games twice in the Dak Prescott era. And the 2 years in question were both years that he missed more than half of the season due to injury. So if he is healthy, you can set your watch by the fact that they're at the very least going to win 10 games, to your point.
Well, I hope he is healthy, and I worry about Dak's health. I really do, but I hope he is healthy, and I hope we see the good version of the Cowboys, because it's good for our business, obviously. And I've said that for years. The Cowboys are very good for business. All right, RJ, tell me what you have the Cowboys finishing.
I'm very close to you. A little bit more optimistic. I've got them going 11-6. And again, I think that it ultimately will come down to kind of 5 games, around that territory where, it is a game played with an oblong-shaped ball made out of leather. And sometimes, it's a year where those bounces go your way, and sometimes it's a year where they don't. There's regression to the mean in all sorts of senses. And so I think that they'll rebound in a lot of ways. I do think they'll have a little bit of a honeymoon bump, obviously, off of having a new head coach and whatnot, and having Dak back and George Pickens being part of everything. And they tried, right? They tried this offseason, which is enough for, I think, 3 wins on its own to add to how they did last year. So 11-6 feels fair to me. But again, if all hell broke loose and they only won 9 games, I think that would still flirt with a wild card, and at the very least, like I said, would deliver the over on 7.5.
RJ Ochoa, editor-in-chief for Blogging the Boys. And look, I think that's fair. There are some teams, like you say, that I just don't know what they're going to be like. So it's very difficult to predict. We did it anyway. Minix is always famous for saying the Cowboys will win a game they have no business winning, and they'll lose a game they have no business losing, because it seems to happen that way every year. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, like I said, they haven't beaten the Broncos since 1995. But they'll beat the crap out of the Packers, or they'll go to Detroit, you know what I mean, and skunk them, or they'll like beat the tar out of Kansas City on Thanksgiving with the whole world watching. Like, there will be one of those games, and there will be a lot of people who walk tall the week after. But then the other shoe will drop, because this is these are the Dallas Cowboys, and I agree with Jason. Like, they will find a way. They only know how to find that way to embarrass you. Just when you think you're safe, that's when you're in the most danger possible.
All right, RJ, I haven't had a chance to talk to you since the George Pickens trade. And I know before that trade was made, I read some of your tweets and said you weren't a big fan of that trade. It happened. What do you think now?
Yeah, I keep saying, just for the purpose of being honest and objectivity, that I wouldn't have done it. I mean, I don't want to sound like a waffler. I mean, if I had been consulted, I would have said, no, I think this is too big of a risk. I recognize that they're in a position to take a risk. And I recognize that I've even, challenged them to take a risk. Right? So I don't mean to be like, well, not this one, but it is an enormous risk. And there's a lot of people who say things like, well, if the Eagles had done it, it would be brilliant. Yeah, well, I mean, they've kind of earned that benefit of the doubt, right? Like for us to trust them. And so there's zero doubt that there are huge rewards available here. There's zero doubt that he's a fantastically talented football player. There's zero doubt that they were in need. And that's where there's a little bit of dog chasing its own tail here for me with the fan base. People are like, well, they really need a receiver. Well, I mean, like, whose fault is that? Like, they were painted into a corner and they held the brush. You know what I mean? Like, this was their doing. They made this bed. And so I recognize that, if we all want them to fix things, there are going to be some give and take that they're going to have to make. They're going to have to take some chances and try to cut some corners. And I think this is definitely one of those things. And I don't wish that they had reached on a receiver in the draft. Obviously, Ted McMillan didn't fall to them, and it is what it is. And ultimately, I commend them for not living in some sort of sunk cost fallacy and saying, hey, look, we traded for Jonathan Mingo last year. That's going to be our plan. I respect that they're willing to say that's a failure. If we get something out of that, great, but we need to do something. This is one of the most influential ways that they have helped Dak Prescott over the last decade. And so in that sense, I'm a fan. Again, lots and lots and lots of pros, but people say things like, oh, well, if he walks, we're getting a third-round comp pick. None of that is guaranteed. There are so many, details and things that have to happen, dominoes that have to fall for that to be the case. So I don't think it's being fair to only evaluate the pros of the situation and act like the cons don't exist, because there are multiple cons associated with it.
No, there's no question about it. And I don't think he stays there, because I think he thinks he's the number one guy and wants to get paid like a number one guy.
To that point, I don't mean to interrupt, but okay, I wouldn't have done the trade, but we're here now, right? We crossed this line. Now we have to live here. Okay, great. Then extend it. Like, to me, there's zero reason not to do it. And it's the same principle, the same idea and philosophy that we've talked about. Pick your favorite player that has not gotten the extension on time. And people say, like, no, well, let's see what he has to do. Well, then, why did you trade for him? The plan is for him to be a very good player for you, right? The plan, the goal is for him to succeed and to thrive and to be worthy of that contract. And so it will never be cheaper. The situation you can somewhat liken it to that I have, when the Eagles traded for A.J. Brown, that was during the 2021 NFL draft. They spent the first-round pick, not a third-round pick. The very first thing they did was give them an extension. Very first thing, before you ever played it down for them. Why? You're simply betting against yourself by saying, well, because, like, what are they going to do to celebrate it? If he sucks, if he has 400 yards, they're going to be like, yeah, hell yeah, Joe. Now we can pay him less. Awesome. Look at us. We're super smart. No. So you made the decision, great, but do it the right way. I mean, like, extend him now so that next offseason, when you're dealing with more extensions you didn't do early, you don't have this one on top of it. Get ahead of something for once.
Well, they still got to extend that, what's his name, Micah Parsons guy. That hasn't happened yet.
Yeah. Now I'll ask you a question. Does that happen before you set foot on the tennis courts in Oxnard?
It just judging from past history, RJ, I would bet that it does not.
Isn't that stupid?
Yes.
Or, like, wouldn't that be stupid?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it would. I can't argue with you there. That would be extremely dumb. We saw what happened with CD Lamb, and that didn't work out all that great, although CD eventually came out and had a pretty good year. But, yeah, it should be done. It should already be done, and I'm not sure why it's not. But it is the Dallas Cowboys we're talking about, RJ, and you know it.
That's what comes with the dinner, as they say.
That's exactly right. You're the best, my friend. I appreciate you jumping on with us. RJ Ochoa, editor-in-chief for Blogging the Boys. We appreciate you very much. We'll talk again soon, my friend.
Thanks for having me, Joe. Do me a favor. Ask Pledge how many Texans players he drafted in our Dynasty Football League.
I'll ask him. Yeah, you must know the answer to that. It must not be very many.
Oh, it's a number. I'll just have the conversation.
I'll have the conversation. RJ Ochoa, always good to talk to you, my friend, about the Dallas Cowboys. And, of course, RJ and all our guests appear via the Buyers Barricades guest line. Buyers Barricades provides traffic control, rental, and sales for San Antonio and beyond online at buyersbarricades.com.